Hey everyone, it's Peter Schiff. It is Wednesday, May 5th, 2010. I wanted to follow up a little bit on my discussion from yesterday on this video blog about Greece and the similarities between Greece and the United States, especially given the fact that there are these major riots going on right now in Greece. Unfortunately, people have actually died in these riots, and we've had a lot of volatility in the markets, stock markets, currency markets, commodity markets, as a result of what's going on. First of all, we need to understand, why are the people in Greece rioting? I mean, the reason they're rioting is because the government is threatening to reduce their benefits, to reduce their pay and their generous compensation packages. And of course, why are they being asked to give this up? Well, so that the Greek government can pay bondholders. Now, many of the people who own Greek bonds don't live in Greece. They don't vote in Greek elections. Who do you think the Greek politicians really want to listen to? And imagine, asking the Greeks to sacrifice so that German citizens or American citizens or Chinese citizens or Saudis, whoever owns the debt, can be made whole, can get back all their interest payments, all their principal payments. See, this is difficult for politicians. The only reason I believe that the Greek politicians are even considering paying back the debt is because they're in the Eurozone, because they can't print money. Had they borrowed in drachma, it would be a very easy choice. Just create inflation. Everybody could get paid, right? Nobody's benefits would be cut. Of course, that would actually be worse. Sure, the Greek citizens are protesting the fact that they might get paid less. But if the government could just print money, which so many people seem to think would be the easy way out, they would still get paid less. They'd have the same amount of drachma, but the drachma wouldn't buy as much because the cost of living would go up. And just printing money and debasing your currency so that politicians can pretend that they're actually fulfilling their promises is not true. I mean, imagine in the United States, when we get to the same predicament, when interest rates start to rise, and foreigners are not, willing to loan unless we increase interest rates, are American politicians going to be able to tell American citizens that they have to put up with higher taxes, cuts in Social Security, so that we can make interest payments to the Chinese and to the Saudis? Not on your life. I mean, do you think American politicians would even propose something like that? I mean, that's what the Greek politicians are proposing that the Greeks do. And I think the only reason they're doing that is because they realize at this point that being forced out of the Eurozone, trying to recreate the drachma, would be even worse. It's only because their backs are to the wall that they're considering doing the right thing. Now, personally, I think the best thing that can happen for the Eurozone and for Greece is that there's no bailout at all. I would much rather see Greece restructure their debts and ask everybody to take a haircut, including their creditors. I don't think the people that loan the Greek government money should get off the hook and get all their money back. After all, it does take two to tango. They shouldn't have loaned so much money so recklessly. Part of the problem is maybe Greece was cooking the books a little bit, maybe with help from Goldman Sachs. I've heard that allegation. But I think that the Greek citizens would be more likely to swallow the medicine if they knew that the sacrifice was being shared by everybody, including the creditors. And I think that would also be a good thing, because it would send a message to creditors of other countries that, you better be prepared. You might lose money when you loan to governments if they're indebting their citizens too much. And I think that will put some restraints and some discipline on runaway government spending in Europe, because faced with higher interest rates, governments might cut back on their borrowing. But I think whatever happens, to the extent that the Greek politicians are able to deliver some tough-tasting medicine because of the sticks provided from Europe and Germany, and I know there are carrots there as well, but the Greeks are going to act in a more responsible manner than they otherwise would have acted absent the discipline of the euro. Now, of course, if they can't, if it is too difficult a task, and they don't want to make any cuts, if the Greek citizens refuse these cuts, and Greece falls out of the euro and tries to recreate the drachma, I do not think that is going to be a long-term negative for the euro. I think actually that is probably the most positive development for the euro, despite what people are saying, because I think that would show creditors around the world that when you loan money to a European member country, they're going to pay you back in real money, and if they don't pay you back, it's because they defaulted. And of course, when that happens, the creditors are going to make sure that they don't let any European nations go too far into debt, because after all, if they allow that to happen, they might not get paid back. Now, that is not the situation in the United States. And it's amazing for me to watch all these commentators on the financial channels looking at what's going on with Greece, talking about it, and not seeing any of the problems for the United States. You know, again, it's very reminiscent of the mortgage crisis as the problems became evident in subprime, people just assuming that this was not a big deal, that it was only concentrated to just the subprime borrowers. Well, in this situation, Greece represents subprime, and I guess the United States represents prime. But the reality is, we are in just as much trouble. The fact that our politicians are not going to be held to the discipline that the Greek politicians are being held to by Germany is not a reason for Americans to celebrate or think that the problems in Greece don't affect us. You know, it's actually going to be worse. Now, maybe the Federal Reserve will try initially to do the right thing. Remember, the Federal Reserve cannot, as I said yesterday, just sign on to this, well, we're just going to print money and hold interest rates low indefinitely to avoid these tough choices. They can't even hint that that's what they would do, or there'd be a run on the dollar right now. The overwhelming opinion around the world is that we have an independent central bank that actually will be tough, that will have the integrity and the independence to raise interest rates sharply to contain inflation. Now, of course, none of that's going to happen. The fact that people actually believe it, well, it's just as irrational as the fact that people believed in the real estate bubble, or that people who bought houses with no money down would actually make their mortgage payments if the houses lost value, or if the mortgages interest payments reset. But in order for the United States to attract foreign capital and keep a lid on inflation, we are going to have to raise interest rates aggressively. They're going to have to rise sharply like they have in Greece, and we're going to have the same choices. American politicians are going to have to deal with the same reality, and we're going to have the same riots in the streets. We're going to have the same protests. You don't think that American citizens are going to be protesting big cuts in Social Security or Medicare, especially when the money is going to China and Japan, if we're not asking them to take any cuts in the amount of money that they're getting, but we're asking Social Security recipients to take cuts in their benefits, right? Is that going to wash? It's not even going to happen. But what's more likely is that the U.S. government is going to do precisely what they think is the best thing to do, precisely what they're saying it's too bad Greece can't do, and they're going to print money. They're going to print money, and they're going to make sure that all of our creditors get paid. And they're going to make sure everyone on Social Security gets paid. And that means nobody gets paid. Because when that cat is out of the bag, nobody, and I mean nobody around the world, is going to want to own U.S. dollar-denominated debt. It's all going to be up for sale. And of course, who's going to buy it all? The Federal Reserve. Because the Federal Reserve will be the only entity that's willing to buy it, because it doesn't care how much money it loses. It's not its own money. After all, it just prints it. It creates it out of thin air. It's got nothing to lose. But the more it does that, the more everybody else has to lose. So in order to stay on this track, in order for America to avoid becoming Greece, to avoid having to make the hard choices that we think we're immune from, we have to be willing to sacrifice the value of our currency, to let it collapse, and to let inflation run out of control. But of course, the irony of it is, that's worse. The average American is going to suffer much worse through runaway or hyperinflation than if we legitimately restructured our debts and didn't pay 100 cents on the dollar to our creditors and made real meaningful cuts in entitlements. But instead of doing that, we're going to pretend that we can keep all of our promises, because no one in Washington has the guts to tell the American public the truth. And instead, we're going to end up wiping out everybody, inflicting far more damage than had we told the truth. And that is the real threat. And it is coming soon. This is not in the distant future. This is going to happen. It's all going to unfold over the next few years. And I am just as convinced that this prediction is right as any predictions I made in the past regarding the real estate market. Anyway, that's it for today. Take care, everybody.